Hello everybody and welcome back to the Business Growth Club. This is your weekly edition, and in this week's edition we're going to be looking at the marketing budget and how you can set your own marketing budget for your business. Now, I'm very often asked, probably on a daily basis, how much should I spend on marketing? People want to know what their marketing budget should be. How much do they need to spend year on year on marketing? That's branding, that's sales, that's marketing, that's promotion, all of the stuff you do to get customers. Well, that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at how you can set your own marketing budget successfully. I'll show you how much you should be spending on marketing, which means it doesn't matter what industry sector you're in or what business sector you're in. I'll show you how to set a budget that will always return a profit. So how do we actually set this marketing budget? Well, here are a couple of the common options that I see businesses using. The first and probably most popular is to simply spend the same as you did last year, give or take. So if you spent £5,000 or £10,000 last year, or £100,000 or £200,000 last year, you'll spend about that much again this year. So that's option number one. Option number two is to do it based on retained profits. So let's imagine you made £100,000 profits last year and you might reinvest 25% or 50% or whatever. Maybe you want to do it on a set percentage of your turnover. So if you turn over 100,000, you want to spend, say, 25% of your turnover. Or maybe you just take each idea as it comes. This is one of the most popular strategies, almost as popular as just seeing what you spent last year. It's just to take every idea as it comes. So if somebody says, how about SEO, you look into it and you see the credibility of the person involved and you make a decision one way or the other. So you don't have a fixed budget, you just say, well, ideas will come and go, and I'll pick them as I'm happy with it. Now, which of those is the right strategy for your business? Well, I'm going to be a little controversial here and tell you that I actually believe the idea of a marketing budget in this annual marketing budget, your yearly marketing budget format, is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. And I really still, to this day, don't understand why it's so popular. Even some of the world's most successful companies do this, because it makes no financial, no business, or no economic sense. It is literally one of the worst ideas ever. Why do I say this? Well, setting a yearly marketing budget has no intelligence behind it. If we go back to the first principle and we ask ourselves, what is the purpose of marketing? You will tell me it's to turn an investment, it's to generate a return on investment. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean if I place an advert for £100, I hope to get some customers for it, and I hope that those customers will spend significantly more than £100, so I've generated a return on my investment. My investment is for £100 in the advert, and my return is all of the sales that I make. Now, if we accept that that's the purpose of marketing, and it's difficult to argue that marketing's for any other purpose than to give us a return on investment, then why would we have a yearly marketing budget? If we want a return on investment, why would we say we're going to spend £100,000 or £10,000 or £100 even this year on marketing? It makes no sense. If the purpose of marketing is to give us that return on investment, the simple conclusion is we need to do marketing. If we need to do some marketing, we're left with two choices. So do we intelligently and strategically decide how much we need to spend to yield a return, how much we need to invest to yield a return, or do we simply spend the budget we've set? Well, when you put it in those terms, it becomes quite obvious, doesn't it? You'd obviously spend intelligently and calculatingly and strategically how much you need to get your desired return on investment. Quite simple. So I invite you to forget about this idea of a marketing budget. All your marketing campaigns should be run on the idea of return on investment, not budget. That's why you should only ever have a campaign budget, not a marketing budget. You will say how much you're going to spend on one campaign to see if it gives you the return on investment. That's the point of this. One small caveat, of course, is whilst we're always looking for that return on investment, we do need a cash flow budget. Obviously, you can't spend £100,000 if you don't have £100,000 in the bank. My rule of marketing is only ever spend what you can afford to lose, because all marketing is experimental and until it's proven to work. But other than cash flow planning, which is separate, You should only ever have a return on investment budget for your marketing. So, my idea is that actually you should spend as much as you possibly can on marketing. Forget budgets, spend as much as you possibly can. However, you only do that strategically. You do that by starting very small and testing for return on investment. I've said this so many times before, but I must repeat it because it's so profound and it's so important to your business success. No one can ever say whether marketing will or won't work for any business. There's over 100 variables involved. What we have to do is we have to be intelligent about the campaigns we pick. We pick the ones which we believe are most likely to work. We follow all of the rules of marketing, the DNA of marketing as I call it, so we have a campaign that's most likely to work. But we still can't guarantee it will work. But we want to spend as much as we possibly can because we want to make as much money as we possibly can, and we know that it's based on return on investment. So if we spend as much as we possibly can, we'll get the bigger return on that investment. But we can't lose our money. So the two of them come together by starting small and testing. So as I say, you handpick the best strategies, you apply the DNA of marketing and you test it. And you see if that £100 advert I just referred to gives you a return on investment that is significantly more than £100. If it does, so you know that it's what's known as a positive return on investment, you've made money on it, you've yielded the return on your investment, then you gradually increase your return on investment, either until the marketing stops working, because you've just expanded it so much that you've reached the outer limits, or you retire because you're just too rich. Okay, admittedly the last option's probably not going to happen anytime too soon, but if you get very successful at marketing, of course, there is a point where you're successful and you sell out. That's the kind of purpose of running your business, really. But we extrapolate, we start small and we extrapolate, and we grow larger and larger and larger until the marketing is at the outer limits. Of course, we also add new campaigns. So we add new campaigns as we go. Of course, I've talked about this in a lot more detail in the last couple of videos on the return on investment theme, when I told you, number one, how to measure your return on investment and how important it was. I showed you the different diagnostic tools you could use, such as sales conversion and customer lifetime value. We looked at using a template, and then we looked at how important return on investment was. Then we got other people's Business Growth Club members' marketing campaigns and their return on investment, and I showed you how you would start small, test your return on investment, that's the information you gave me, and then how you'd gradually increase it. And you add new campaigns as you go. You don't just do adverts, you don't just do direct mail, you don't just do online, Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it. You do stuff strategically, you add stuff as you go. So this might sound like a mixed message, but it really isn't. It's a strategic message. You don't want a marketing budget. You want to spend as much as you possibly can because you know every time you spend money on marketing, you get a return on investment. But you need to experiment small, make sure the return on investment is big enough to be worth it, then gradually increase it until it stops working, or you need to retire, you sell the business or you move on. And you add new campaigns into the mix as you go, slowly but surely adding new campaigns so you continue to grow your business. You don't want to be dependent on one form of marketing. Let me give you an example. Imagine your business is the top of Google for a really competitive search phrase such as time management training. And you're the top of Google and you get hundreds of inquiries a week and you sell out your courses. Then Google changes the rules and then that's it. You're gone. Your business is not getting all those inquiries. Or you're dependent on a Yellow Pages advert, and the Yellow Pages advert works brilliantly. But one year your telephone number is printed wrong and then you're in trouble. Or let's say that you're dependent on direct mail, but then the government introduces legislation to change direct mail law that stops what you're doing. So you can never be dependent on one marketing campaign, even if it means a return on investment of, say you spend £10 to get £100 back and it's the best campaign you've ever run. You always need to add more stuff into the mix. So do you see, when I started, I said I want to answer the question, how much should I spend on my marketing budget? I've said you do need a budget. However, it's a totally different type of budget. It says, how much do I need to spend to get a return on investment? And we're going to look at this in more detail now. Imagine, just to bring this theory home, I want to give you £100. I offer you this Royal Bank of Scotland note of £100 sterling. So I want to give you this £100. Would you buy the £100 off me for £1? Would you give me £1 if I gave you £100 in return? Of course you would. Now this is exactly the return on investment argument I'm talking about. I know this sounds incredibly basic. It's supposed to be basic to bring the point home, but this is what you do. Your investment is the £1. Your return on that £1 investment is the £100. That is all marketing is. Now do you see when I put it in these very simple terms, would you buy £100 for £1? All of a sudden that idea of a marketing budget sounds crazy, because why would you set a marketing budget of £10,000 a year? Because on £10,000 a year you get a determined return on investment. So why would you limit your success to just the return on that £10,000 investment? You'd want to spend as much as you possibly could, cash flow permitting, and your living costs as your salary as the business owner permitting. You don't want to limit your success to that £10,000. It makes no sense. So we know that this theory works. You would buy £100 for £1. Now, if we continue, because of course you know in reality marketing doesn't really work like that. You don't really have £1 for £100 return. It's sometimes a little bit more than that. But if I said to you, I'll give you this £100 for £7, you'd still be happy. If I said give me £20 for £100 return, you'd still be happy. If I said give me £10,000, of course you wouldn't be happy. That's a negative return on investment. And if you run a marketing campaign like that, don't worry, do two somethings. Number one, check that all the basics were right. Was it the right target market? Was your offer good enough? Was the DNA of marketing there? If it wasn't, then just change that. Or secondly, just don't run it again, just stop. You don't want to run that, it's unsuccessful. Don't get downhearted when your marketing campaigns don't work. You will always have successful and unsuccessful campaigns. When it's unsuccessful, as I say, either see if you can change something to improve it, or just move away. Just say that doesn't work. I test 10 or 20 campaigns just for myself on an ongoing basis. And some of them I'm constantly improving, other ones are new ideas, and sometimes they work brilliantly, sometimes they take a bit of work and persistence, which is the most common group, and the other ones, they just don't work, so I move on. I don't lament, I'm not unhappy, because I'm prepared to say I'm trying to get £100 return and I want to spend less than £100. But if it sometimes happens to be more, well, that's a small mistake we've made and we move on. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. You've got to be open-minded with your marketing. If you're so risk-averse that you're worried that you're going to spend money and not get a return on investment, well, you'll never be open-minded enough to grow your business. Remember what I said before, only spend what you can afford to lose. Don't spend £10,000 on a campaign if you can't afford it, but have an amount of money that you can experiment with. That's the only sort of marketing budget you should have if you think in those terms, and be prepared to use that. Hopefully you get a decent return on investment, but if it doesn't work, we move on to the next option. That's what marketing's all about. So to summarise what I'm saying there, basically if I offered you £100, you would swap it for anything up to £99, because even if you gave me £99 for £100, you'd still make £1 profit. Of course, you prefer to give me £1 so you make £99, but in reality, you're going to buy anything up to £100. It's exactly the same with marketing. Like I say, of course I'm being crude. I'm deliberately being crude to bring home the point, but you understand this. The £100 is the amount of sales you make from an advert you place. So if the advert costs you anything less than £99, then you're happy with that. So if I'm saying that marketing budgets really make no sense, and your only marketing budget other than for cash flow purposes and what you can afford to lose should only be experimental, so you test your return on investment and keep growing it and keep improving it, why, if that's such a bad idea, the marketing budget, the annual marketing budget most businesses use, why is it so common? Well, I believe it's for a couple of reasons. I actually believe it's because they don't really know what marketing is working, so it's easy to hide behind a budget. It's easy to say, I've spent £10,000 this year on marketing, and that's all I'm ever going to spend. Or £1,000 or £100,000 or £1,000,000, it doesn't matter. You can hide behind the budget. You know from my previous week's videos how to measure a return on investment and how to optimise it and how to improve it. But what often happens is people will spend a budget because it gives them a convenient excuse. They feel like they're giving a little bit of money to marketing so that it's almost the guilt trip's gone. They business owners convince themselves, if I spend a little bit of money on marketing, the powers that be in the world will be kind to me, my business will be successful. And they hide behind phrases. When you approach them with good marketing ideas, they'll often say stuff like this: I can't actually afford it. This is something here, it says I can't afford an actual sign. And you know what this means. It's a business owner saying, I just can't afford to do this marketing. We might say to them, you really need a sign outside of your showroom or whatever it happens to be, your shop, your store. Oh, I just can't afford it. I've spent my budget. It's entirely the wrong way to look at your marketing. The question isn't, can I afford it? The question is, can I afford not to? The question is, if I'm going to get £100 back, how much can I afford to invest in it? So it's what you can afford, not what you can't afford. The size of your marketing budget doesn't matter, it's the return on investment. I've said this before, that I would be happy to pay £36,000 for an advert because I know that I'll get £100,000 return. So £36,000 might sound like a lot of money to most businesses because it is a lot of money. But if we know what a return on investment is, we're happy. Of course, we do a lot of marketing, so we test and we improve and we gradually increase before we get to £36,000. We don't just spend £36,000 on an advert hoping that it gives a return on investment. We start very small, but you see the idea. So when someone says, do you want to spend £36,000? It isn't, I can't afford that. Like in the picture, I can't afford that sign. It's, can I afford not to do that? Is this going to adversely affect my business? Because if placing that advert will give you a return on investment, then you can't afford not to. If placing an advert for £1,000 will give you £5,000 return, you simply can't afford not to invest that. Yeah? So that's the theory. It kind of turns this idea of an annual marketing budget on its head. And you have to break away from these business laws. There's so many of these laws in business where everybody tells you have to do business like this. It's like lawyers say, oh, we have to charge by the hour. You don't have to charge by the hour. Just because everybody in the world does it doesn't mean it's the best idea. Of course, the very best ideas are those that change the status quo. They change the established way of doing things and they improve on it. It's not change for change's sake, it's intelligent change. And going away from this annual budget to something like this makes a lot more sense. Now, if you're not quite sure, because I know I've talked through this theory and I've said scrap this budget because it doesn't really work and have this idea of return on investment, you may be not so sure what you should do. So I'm going to give you a bit of a personal example now from my business so I can explain exactly how this works. So you can see it not from a theoretical angle, but from a practical angle of how a sort of regular business does this and how they've got rid of a marketing budget and now they have a return on investment budget. What you do is you take your lifetime value. That's the amount of money your customers spend with you during their lifetime. Your customers might buy from you once, they might buy from you 100 times, they may come and visit you 10 times, whatever it happens to be, you add up the value. Now, of course, if you have 100 customers, the chances are some of them will spend a lot of money and some of them won't spend very much. So all you do is you add up all of the revenue from your customers and then you divide it by your number of customers. So you compute an average, a mean average. So all you're doing is you're saying, on average, this is how much money a customer spends. We figure out how many referrals each customer brings, and this is very important. We need to add the full revenue of referrals, because if you run an advert and that gives you a customer, but you know every time you get a customer from those types of adverts, they often bring you a referral, 2 referrals, half a referral, whatever it works out to be, you've got to include that. That's known as a referral tree. You've got to include that in your calculations. So take your lifetime value, add the referrals, then, and this is the crucial bit, you times it by profit. You times it by your net profit margin. That's the percentage per every pound that you make in profit. So if someone spends £100 with you, your net profit after your direct and indirect cost is £20, and that's a 20% margin. Then you have your £100. You have that £100 I said, how much would you exchange this for? That's what it is for your business. Then you simply decide, how much are you willing to pay to get £100 profit? What you've done here is you've figured out all of the revenue an average customer spends, how much they spend, how much money goes through your till, either literally or metaphorically. Add in all the referrals that they bring. Times it by the profit that you make, because we're not interested in turnover, we're interested in profit, and you have the amount of money you make per customer. And imagining that's £100, you have to decide how much you want to spend on marketing to get £100 profit. So that's the formula. Customer lifetime value, including referrals, times by net profit margin equals customer lifetime value, their income over their lifetime. So you know how much income a customer, including all of the referrals they bring, is worth to you. So as I said, I'm going to give you a personal example. I've rounded down these numbers to make them easy, but basically an average client for us spends £2,200 a year. I've rounded that down slightly, it's 2,200 and something, but just to make the maths easy, to call it 2,200. Obviously some people spend significantly more than that, some people spend significantly less than that, but we add up all of the fees people contribute in a year, divide it by the number of clients, and it comes to 2200. Now, this is important. We don't want to just look at one-off sales or how much somebody spends in a year. We want to know what that customer is worth over their lifetime. Now again, some customers might stay with you for 10 years, other customers for 1 year, but you'll have an average period. I'm going to say for the purposes of this example that it's only 3 years. It should be significantly more than that for my business, but I'm saying 3 years just to be conservative, because I'd rather err on the side of caution than be too lax about it. So we're just going to say 3 years, and I know that each customer brings 2 referrals. So when somebody comes to us via most of our marketing streams, we know that on average they bring a couple of referrals, so we know that we've got to add those in. Of course, we do a lot to work on those referrals. Not many businesses will say that one customer brings them a couple of referrals. But we do a lot of stuff that's focused around referrals, which I'll do future videos on how you can get more referrals. It's such an easy way to grow your business. As you see here, I might place an advert that gives me 1 customer, but I know that a customer coming from an advert brings me a couple of referrals on average. So that advert didn't give me 1 customer, it gave me 3 customers. So that's very important. Always add in the referrals. So basically the calculation is, and I know this is numbers again, but you can follow these numbers. I apologise for having them, but they help this to make financial sense. Then I'll explain the theoretical sense. So we know a customer spends 2200 in a year. They stay for 3 years on average, so we're going to say the customer gives us 6,600 income. We're going to add 2 referrals, that's 6600 times 2, so that basically gives us 19,800, about £20,000. So we know that a customer is worth, including all of our referrals, £20,000 over their lifetime. Now we've got to times that by the profit margin, because £20,000 turnover sounds great, but of course you've got to pay for your staff, you've got to pay for your offices, you've got to pay for everything else that happens. So we times it by our profit margin. I'm going to say to round it down to 20%. So the profit margin is slightly higher than that, but I'm rounding it down again to err on the side of caution. So if we take that just below £20,000 times by 20 gives us just below £4,000. Hence our customer is worth, on average, everything included, about £4,000 in bottom line profits. That's the cash in your back pocket, if you will, that you make from that customer. Now your numbers will look totally different to this. Some of you might find that actually you're making around £4,000 over a customer lifetime. Some of you it might be £24,000. Some of you £104,000. Other of you it might be 400 or even 40 or £4. But you will have a number, and it's all on return on investment, so it doesn't matter how big or small the number is. Now I know though that £4,000 is the profit that somebody is contributing over their lifetime. So if I had a marketing budget, I'd just be spending a percentage of the budget every year to get clients. That makes no sense. Surely what I want to say is, okay, I get £4,000 from a client. So imagine that I want to add X number of clients every year. I then need to figure out how much do I need to spend to get £4,000 in profit. The £4,000 is that £100 we showed in that example, so how much do I need to contribute? Now even if I was to go to a 1 in 4 ratio, so for every £1 I spent I got £4 return, which is a pretty good return in marketing. That's maybe something you should be aiming for. That's a nice, comfortable return on investment. That's a successful marketing campaign. then I can easily spend £1,000. Now actually £1,000 on marketing it's a lot of money. Because I know that people are worth £4,000 to me, I can spend a whole £1,000. All of a sudden marketing becomes quite easy, doesn't it? If I only had a small amount of money to spend, I would struggle maybe to find customers. I'd struggle to find the right marketing. But if I know that even if I spend £1,000, which is a lot of money really, isn't it, to get £4,000, I'm still got a great return on investment. That's like buying that £100 for just £25. So all of a sudden it works. However, a word of warning before we conclude this video. It's very important that you do these calculations properly, because if you do, they'll change your business, but they must be accurate, and they must be accurate on two fronts. The first front is number one, you must make sure that you get the income right and your profit margin right to give you the right figure. Because if it's a little bit wrong and you've done your figures wrong, you'll end up, say, assuming a customer's worth £1,000 but they're worth £500, and you end up in very troubled water. So number one, re-listen to this recording and make sure you get the numbers correct. If you're at all unsure, please drop me an email. I'll happily help you. This is one of these classic ones when it comes to the numbers. You're either good at it or you're not. And if you're struggling with it, it will take me 5 minutes to help you. And I'd much rather spend 5 minutes helping you do this as part of your membership than you getting it wrong and ending up in troubled water. So whenever I use these figures, if you're not so sure, drop me an email and I'll help you and I'll look at it. Take me 5 minutes and it'll save you a lot of trouble. So number one, do your calculations properly. Number two, make sure you look at your customer lifetime value, including all their referrals. And I'm going to give you an example now. Let's imagine I didn't look at how long a customer stays with me. I just looked at how much they spent in 1 year. And I didn't include the referrals they brought. I would only assume that their profit was £440 because I'm only looking at 1 year's income, which is £2,200, and I'm not including any referrals, so I'm just taking £2,200 and I'm timesing it by 20%, which gives me just over £400. Now that would mean that I could only spend, if I wanted £4 return on every £1 I spend, £110. Do you see how all of a sudden my marketing has just got significantly more difficult? Before, I could spend £1,000, so I could really invest and I could really run some great marketing campaigns, and I didn't need to penny pinch because I could put together high quality campaigns that really work because I got such a good return on my investment. But if I did my maths wrong, and actually it was only, I thought £400, so I only spent £100, well, there's not very much marketing you can do in professional services for £100. Of course, if your profit is £400, your marketing will by definition be cheaper because you're selling a lower value item and it's easier to do that. It's a ratio. So what's important is the percentage, not how much. If you're trying to sell luxury yachts, £1,000 of your marketing budget is not going to help you. You need more like £10,000. So it always works on that ratio. But make sure you get your numbers right. And remember, whilst it's often been said by business owners that numbers only matter to the bank manager, well, it's not true. As you've seen in this video, an annual marketing budget is a really stupid idea. It makes no sense and it's unstrategic and it won't help your business, and in fact it could limit your success. Saying I'm going to start small, I'm going to test my marketing, I'm going to make sure I get a good return on investment. Let's aim for that. For every £1 I spend, I get £4 back. Then you just say, how much money can I possibly spend? Because every time I spend £1, I get £4 back. So why would you ever stop? Of course, that's utopian, and I know that of course what will happen is you'll hit good campaigns and bad campaigns, and you've got bumps in the road. That's why we do so many videos giving you so many options, and I offer to help you overcome those problems. But fundamentally, you'll get to that position where you're putting £1 in, you're getting £4 back. Then your numbers matter, not just to the bank manager, they really matter to you, because they're the blueprint for your success. So that brings us to the end of today's recording. I hope you found this useful. I know it's been numbers driven and theoretical, but next week we're going to look at a very practical example in the 4 key business sectors. That's trade, retail, product and professional services. So we're going to look at those different types of businesses, and we're going to look at how you can apply this in a practical way. But from today's recording you know that the idea of a marketing budget makes no sense. You need a marketing budget, but it's one that's based on return on investment. How many £1 can I spend to get £4 back? And the question isn't can I afford this marketing, it's can I afford not to? Will this give me a comfortable return on investment or not? So what I strongly encourage you to do now is turn down this video, go to your computer, your accounts package, however you want to do it, and figure out the total lifetime value of your customers, including their referrals, times it by your profit, and come up with that customer net income over their lifetime. That £4,000 like it was for me. It could be 400 for you, 4,000, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Have that number. Next week I'll tell you what to do with that number. So I hope this has been useful. As always, any questions, please use the question and answer service. That's why it's there, and I want to help you get to grips with these theories and apply them in your business. So thank you very much for listening. Have a fantastic time in business. You'll hear from me in a week's time. So goodbye for now.